Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the final panel discussion that we're going to have here on exploring adjacencies and also building your business around your core competence and involving yourself with all the factors that go into building a successful company. I'm delighted to be joined by two wonderful people, friends of mine and friends of ours. The company that we're going to be featuring today, which is Zeakal, which is not an SBIR company. And so this is from Larta's own network that we've built over a long period of time. Our association with the company goes back to 2011 or 12 in relation to an event that we do called the Ag Innovation Showcase. But what we've tried to discuss in the last couple of panel discussions is the adjacent markets that companies who have a core competency in a particular sector have explored, and as a consequence of exploring them, have built something of a presence in that marketplace, while not at all forgetting, but in fact redoubling their efforts in their home markets. One thing that I really want to bring out in this discussion here is the values and the mission and the thought leadership that go into building a successful company in today's climate. In particular, focused on ESG, environmental, social, and governance issues. This is, I think, a hallmark of this particular company. And instead of me taking up the time to be able to express the value that this company has built, I'm going to turn it over to Chen, whom I'm delighted to introduce here, to give you a little bit of the flavor of the story that we're trying to feature here in terms of both the adjacencies and the kind of investment he got in. Han?
Great. Well, thank you for the very warm introduction, Rohit. And over the past decade, Larta has been a great friend and supporter of Zeakal. And we're so happy that you've been able to witness our growth during this time. And so for a lot of the entrepreneurs that may be listening to this, adjacencies are another word for growth. And as an entrepreneur, you're constantly being asked by investors, you're constantly being asked by your management team, when do you focus and when do you grow? And so to kind of provide perspective on our journey about how we entered the adjacency, in this case, the cannabis and hemp market, which are really the fastest growing and newest addition to agriculture and plant sciences in specific, I want to kind of take you back a few years to 2017. We were coming off of a difficult year. We had a major collaboration and partnership fall apart after months of due diligence and even post-term sheet. Our data came back, I would say, ambiguous that year, not quite sure what to do with it. And many of you listening might know that feeling of being stuck in the middle of the ocean with land nowhere to be seen. And around that time, our lead investor, Finistere Ventures, who led our Series B, Ingrid Fung, one of the principals there, kind of came on board and took a much more active role with the company and worked closely with the management team. And across a 18-month period, not only did the company find its feet, but we really experienced tremendous growth. And it's a great example of active investing and the value that it can add. And throughout this journey over the past now 2 years, what we've really learned is that these adjacencies not only provide new market opportunities in terms of helping to grow new potential, new revenues, but they also have this tremendous effect on shaping your core business. Because I think as an entrepreneur, especially one that has been at this for several years, sometimes your own thinking goes stale. Sometimes the mindset, the things that you take for granted at face value are often not correct, because as entrepreneurs, we should be constantly challenging, what the framework is. We are being paid and we are being motivated to disrupt, to change, and to truly offer stepwise changes or innovations. And the adjacency that we went into in the cannabis and hemp sector not only provided a great new crop where our value proposition was in many ways similar, but also built on some new value creation areas. But having that culture kind of come back into the company and being integrated with how we're approaching our core focus, which is very much in traditional agriculture, the major row crops, soybeans in this case, really reshaped our business. It helped us kind of move forward and reinvent what mission and focus was. And a lot of that came because of that active engagement from our investors, and that active engagement from the new ancillaries that we were working with.
Ingrid, Han has set you up perfectly for your perspectives on working with a company like Zeakal and what you brought to the table. He talked about your active engagement in not just moving the company forward, but also in the values and the value creation that they determined were necessary for their rebranding, as he called it, from 2017 on. You might want to give us a few of your thoughts on this area.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, first off, a little bit of context around, who I work for and some of the values that, Finistere itself has will really kind of help us kind of set the stage. So Finistere is a California-based, ag tech venture fund. We've got an office in Palo Alto and one in San Diego. And so the vision of the fund really was to be not just a top-tier ag tech investor, but a top-tier investor in general. So the fund's really taken a lot of discipline around, looking at what opportunities within our portfolio we think are going to drive growth and drive returns within the portfolio, and then also kind of translate that back into how much time and effort we're allowed to invest as, investment professionals in our portfolio companies. So that's really kind of opened up the opportunity for me to get a lot more involved in Zeakal, particularly, at 2017. I think we were one of the larger shareholders within the company. We had made our initial investment in Fund 1 and kind of re-upped, with the Series B and Fund 2. And, at that point, with some of the, I would say, disappointments the company had in that year, the partners had said, look, Ingrid, we'll give you license to work with this company and, see what you think needs to be done. And, the first thing Han and I did was, I don't know if you remember this, Han, was we sat down in that boardroom in San Diego and you and I kind of went through everything that the company had gone through that year, all of the field trials, where we thought things were going, where things were leading, and had a really candid conversation around, whether we still saw value in the core technology. If we thought, maybe our thesis was wrong, maybe we had made some incorrect assumptions initially about what the power of the technology was. And, there was a very honest dialogue between Han and I around what we viewed as the challenges, what we thought was fixable in the interim, and then where we thought the company needed to go. And really, I think that was the basis of, having a very honest working relationship about where the opportunity, where we saw particular challenges and where we thought we could be really creative around expanding the networks that Han had already spoken to, when it came to bringing on new investors and adding additional capital, and where we saw novel market opportunities that maybe we hadn't taken a look at before. And, Rohit, you and I have had this discussion before, and we've jokingly said, ag is of a really specific demographic, right? Even the image of the farmer that we put out there is this, middle-aged white guy standing in a field in a deer hat, right? And the reality is that ag is quite a diverse field, right? There are farmers literally everywhere in the world, from every background, that are producing food for their communities. So that was something that Han and I thought really deeply about. What is the impact beyond the US, and where are the opportunities for us to leverage this technology that was being developed here in, other markets? And that kind of really opened up the dialogue around impact, responsibility, and then, company values that, maybe hadn't been expressed, quite so declaratively previously.
And Rohit, maybe just to add to that, what Ingrid touched on really emphasized 3 points, one of which is domain expertise. A lot of you don't have an investor with domain expertise. They're really not able to tease apart risk and value properly. And even for me as a non-science background CEO, I had that moment where I started even questioning, could we be able to do what we set out to do? Or even if we were right, do we have the resources or a reasonable path to get there? And I think having that type of honest conversation and having, Ingrid have that background and to be able to be vulnerable with an investor and to be able to share so transparently, but to get that feedback and that honesty about, actually, I think you guys are just these two steps away. And actually, these are the data points where it's quite positive. And this is where it gets even better. So all of a sudden, we went from ambiguous to saying, my God, we are so close to possibly cracking it all. And needless to say, after that, the cards did end up that way, in our subsequent year and the data that we've since shared. And the other part, to put into context about, Ingrid's whole idea of growth, not only in terms of how we were portraying ourselves and marketing to which industries, is 2017 was in the middle of a period where ag was going through consolidation. We called it nuclear winter. A lot of companies were so inwardly focused, and as an industry that's becoming more and more consolidated, you felt like your choices or your options to go to market were becoming more limited, and you felt like those are being exhausted. So Ingrid to open up a whole new universe to us with very
the
different
adjacency that we talked about earlier, Han, right? Exactly. I mean, so the whole movement of cannabis, and of course, leveraging her own relationships with one of the largest, probably the largest investor in cannabis, Canopy Rivers. I mean, that was a really remarkable move that you facilitated, Ingrid. One question on this, though, Han. I mean, it's not just about the domain expertise, is it? I mean, ultimately, there was a rebranding effort that you knew you had to undertake and undergo, and the help that Ingrid provided in contextually putting you into the dialogue, the ESG dialogue, for example, the mission, and you have become a superb example of that because of the fact that you are now driving the company with a certain core set of values and a certain mission, right? I mean, so I wanted to just emphasize that very, very briefly, at least for our folks to be able to recognize that this is an important aspect of their growth as well.
Yeah. For the first few years since founding Zeakal, our business model was really to build a company to fit a mold that already existed in the industry. So despite the fact that we're told often by investors to think big or to think radically different, the truth of the fact is that most investment communities still look for pattern recognition, and so they want to see things that are proven wins, and we kind of follow that model. And in agriculture, when we started, ESG, I would say value over volume, I would say reaching out to the consumer, these things were not very highly valued. Our focus was on science,
yep.
Data, have a great valuation. And in many ways, we almost ignored the people that were behind the company. I know I, as CEO, didn't think that who I was, as a leader was really important for the growth of Zeakal. As long as I performed well, I blocked and tackled, and I operated, I thought that was all that was expected of me. But around 2017, if you took a step back and you looked at the broader context of what was happening, in our industry, but more importantly, beyond it, you started seeing that what people really value was transparency. They valued authenticity. They wanted food to be so much more than just about yield or yield being king. They wanted to know, is my food nutritious? Is it being produced sustainably? Is it being produced equitably? And there are so many things that our technology did as a company that focuses on photosynthesis, which is carbon capture, to then provide better nutrition. I mean, that's literally what Zeakal does, is our plants capture more CO2 and we try to provide better nutrition in the form of better plant composition. And those messages were ones where, years ago, I would say they weren't important, or you would have heard, oh, this is too hard. Our supply chain doesn't value this. Yet when we were able to refocus, rebrand, all of a sudden I looked at, the diversity of the team, the international nature of our team, what we were working on, and the things that we could, price for and market, and the things that we couldn't price for and market, which was our values and stuff that was just generally good for society. We had not talked about any of those things. And
that
so
has become an important aspect of your rebrand effort, but also an important aspect of your identity as a
yep.
company. And that's an extraordinary tribute to the ability for you to be able to incorporate those values. Ingrid, I know, was very much a part of that whole conversation, that movement. Tremendous stuff, really. So,
Well, we have a joke, which is that, Ingrid made Zeakal Instagrammable. And, that's the joke that we all make as
hail the millennial movement.
Hail the
Really.
millennial movement. So maybe we'll be on TikTok soon. But my point is that we had spent so long.
I fully expect you and Ingrid to be involved in a pas de deux, like singing in the rain, singing in a field on TikTok pretty soon.
Don't worry,
But
that TikTok challenge is coming for agriculture, so just wait for that. But the point is we never emphasized, or we never thought of ourselves necessarily as thought leaders or as industry leaders. And again, that was where I think beyond the science and the data, where we've experienced the most tremendous growth is this idea that through our technology and through the authenticity of our team, who we are and who's leading this movement for better science and better products is equally important, because it's reflecting a set of values that I think is definitely demanded and desired in agriculture.
You're so right. Thank you so much for that.
This isn't something that happened overnight, right? When Han and I first started working together, I remember looking at his website and being like, okay, this looks like somebody made this, in a half an hour and chose some generic colors, and I don't know if this is a real company. And Zeakal was very much a real company from a technological perspective, and had a lot of potential to change things, for the betterment of ag, but also, in a way that really aligned with a lot of the values I was seeing, my millennial consumer friends espouse as being very, very important. And something that I remember attending my first showcase conference, back in 2012, Rohit, I remember hearing you talk on stage, and we were having this discussion around, how do we reach the consumer? The consumer has all these demands that are, driving impacts throughout the value chain. How do we reach the consumer? And a tool we have today now that is very affordable for every startup to use is social media. And that was one thing that, right away, Mary from Canopy Rivers and I, pushed Han to do. We were saying, you really need to have an online presence. You need to put out there what the company values are and, what the guiding principles are, but also, you need to reduce all of the scientific information you have to consumable bits, that are shareable by social media. And this is very, very important for public science communication. And it's something that most ag companies have not done really well on.
Most science companies don't do very well, Ingrid. Across the board, in all the areas that we work with, feed, fuel, and heal, most of the companies have the same kind of problem that you're talking about. So thank you for that. I really appreciate your specific notions on being part of the dialogue. And I just wanted to conclude our session. Thank you both for extraordinarily perceptive remarks here. So if I were to just sum it up, explore the adjacencies, but ensure that your home market is well addressed. And you'll find, of course, this is very much a part of how you grow your company. Ensure that you're part of the dialogue by assuming the responsibility of being a thought leader in your space. And that includes, obviously, understanding your relevance to the consumer, your authenticity, as Han was saying. And make sure that if you're seeking investors, first of all, don't all just crowd Ingrid, okay? She's remarkable, I know. But if you already have secured investors, make sure that you're looking to them for more than just capital. They need to provide deep, meaningful expertise to help you navigate their investment and to make you aware of and to be aware of your challenges, your opportunities, and your key points of differentiation. So thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. We'll be around for Q&A as well. Thank you.